This is Shara Scott and Randy Jones from South Carolina Carry, a grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting the Second Amendment and to removing all infringements on the Second Amendment in the state of South Carolina. Today, we will be discussing South Carolina Bill S32 that was pre-filed for the 124th session of the South Carolina General Assembly. The views in the discussion today are those of us as individuals and may not necessarily be those of South Carolina Carry as an organization. Neither Shara nor Randy are attorneys, and we are not giving legal advice. This is a candid discussion about our interpretation of the changes this bill would make to the existing law, and we hope this will start a conversation with those of you who are listening and get you more involved in the legislative process. Do you have anything to add, Randy?
No, just I think the big thing for us is we're glad to see the legislature with some proposed options here for constitutional carry that should be a big help to gun owners in our state. So it's going to be nice to look at this a little bit closer and see what we can do to help people get behind some of these bills.
We plan to do a series of videos about several of the bills that have been introduced this session. Today we're going to focus on S32, which was pre-filed on December 9th, 2020. Sponsorship of this bill will probably change, but as of today, December 18th, it's sponsored by Senators Grooms and Adams. It is one of 4 bills pre-filed in the General Assembly with the title South Carolina Constitutional Carry Act of 2021. There are currently 2 bills pre-filed in the Senate with that name and 2 in the House. The first change in wording is to section 10-11-320B, striking the reference to concealed weapon permits when referring to people authorized to park on the Capitol grounds or in the Capitol parking garage below the Capitol grounds. The next change is to section 162320. This adds a section A to already existing paragraph due to adding a section B, which will be discussed later, and changes number 9 to read, "It is unlawful for anyone to carry about the person any handgun, whether concealed or not, except as follows, unless otherwise specifically prohibited by law. A person in a vehicle, if the handgun is A, secured in a closed glove compartment, closed console, closed trunk, or in a closed container secured by an integral fastener and transported in the luggage compartment of the vehicle. However, this item is not violated if the glove compartment, console, or trunk is opened in the presence of a law enforcement officer for the sole purpose of retrieving a driver's license, registration, or proof of insurance. If the person is not prohibited by state law from possessing the handgun, then the person also may secure his weapon under a seat in a vehicle or in any open or closed storage compartment within the vehicle's passenger compartment, or B, concealed on or about his person, provided that he is not prohibited by state law from possessing the handgun. If the person is not otherwise prohibited by law from possessing the handgun, I'm not sure why they felt the need to leave redundant wording in 2 additional places about not being prohibited by state law from possession of the handgun. The wording on this portion seems very muddled to me, and it could definitely be cleaned up a bit.
Yeah, one thing that I think it's important for people to understand is that because we've had the wording in most of this existing law is because of the requirements for a concealed carry permit. It sort of complicates the changes to sort of take that away. So some of these changes that we're seeing, make it a little bit difficult to understand that when you have a requirement for something and then you're going to take it away. It makes it a little bit difficult to read through some of these and clearly understand exactly what's being referred to.
16-23-20A13 changes to read, "It is unlawful for anyone to carry about the person any handgun, whether concealed or not, except as follows, unless otherwise specifically prohibited by law. The owner or the person in legal possession or the person in legal control of a fixed place of business, while at the fixed place of business, and the employee of a fixed place of business, other than a business subject to Section 16-23-465, while at the place of business. However, the employee may exercise this privilege only after obtaining the permission of the owner or person in legal control or legal possession of the premises. 16-23-465 refers to the law about the unlawful carrying of a firearm onto the premises of a business selling alcoholic liquor, beer, or wine for on-premises consumption. Then a number 17 is added to 16-23-20A to read, "It is unlawful for anyone to carry about the person any handgun, whether concealed or not, except as follows, unless otherwise specifically prohibited by law. A person who is not prohibited from possessing firearms under state law, whether or not the person is a resident of the state." Honestly, I'm failing to see why they even need most of the other exemptions and just skip right to 17. The previously mentioned item B that was added to section 16-23-20 reads, "Unless a person first obtains authorization to possess a handgun from a person with the apparent authority to grant it, nothing in subsection A17 authorizes the carrying of a handgun into any location prohibited under section 2331-215M. Section 2331-215M lists places that are specifically off limits for carrying a firearm, such as government buildings, schools, daycares, churches, medical facilities, etc. The way that sounds, it leaves open the opportunity to receive permission to carry in those otherwise prohibited locations, which does not seem to be an available option currently. I'm not sure how to interpret that right now. I think we need to get one of our attorneys that are on the board to weigh in on that one.
That's a very good question for us to try to get answered.
Section 16-23-420A is changed to remove the CWP reference to read, "It is unlawful for a person to possess a firearm of any kind on any premises or property owned, operated, or controlled by a private or public school, college, university, technical college, or other post-secondary institution, or in any publicly owned building without the express permission of the authorities in charge of the premises or property. The provisions of this subsection related to any premises or property owned, operated, or controlled by a private or public school, college, university, technical college, or other post-secondary institution do not apply when the firearm remains inside an attended or locked motor vehicle and is secured in a closed glove compartment, closed console, closed trunk, or in a closed container secured by an integral fastener and transported in the luggage compartment of the vehicle." Section 16-23-420D is changed to read, "This section does not apply to a guard, law enforcement officer, or member of the armed forces, or student of military science, a married student residing in an apartment provided by the private or public school whose presence with a firearm in or around a particular building is authorized by persons legally responsible for the security of buildings is also exempted from the provisions of this section." And that basically just changed the word weapon to firearm in that section. So I'm not sure what the whole point of that was, other than to possibly include other types of weapons other than a firearm, maybe knives and such. I'm not real sure on that. 16-23-420F is changed to read, "This section does not apply to a person when he is upon any premises, property, or building that is part of an interstate highway rest area for facility." And section 16-23-460, which refers to forfeiture of a firearm used to inflict personal injury. Section B1 is changed to read, the provisions of this section do not apply to 1, a person carrying a concealed weapon upon his own premises or otherwise lawfully carrying a concealable weapon. Section C is changed to read, the provisions of this section also do not apply to handguns, rifles, shotguns, dirks, slingshots, metal knuckles, knives, or razors unless they are used with the intent to commit a crime or in the furtherance of a crime. Section 16-23-465B1 is changed to read, this section does not apply to a person otherwise lawfully carrying a concealable weapon who does not consume alcoholic liquor, beer, or wine while carrying the concealable weapon on the business's premises. A person who violates this item may be charged with a violation of subsection A. Section 51-3-145G is changed to read, possessing any firearm, air gun, explosive, or firework except by duly authorized park personnel, law enforcement officers, or persons using areas specifically designated by the department for use of firearms, air guns, fireworks, or explosives. Licensed hunters may have firearms in their possession during hunting seasons, provided that such firearms are unloaded and carried in a case or the trunk of a vehicle, except that in designated game management areas where hunting is permitted, licensed hunters may use firearms for hunting in the manner authorized by law. This subsection shall not apply to a person carrying a concealable weapon as defined in section 23-31-210-5 and its ammunition. 23-31-210-5 is changed to read, concealable weapon means a firearm having a length of less than 12 inches measured along its greatest dimension. This completely removes the wording stating that it must be carried in a manner that is hidden from public view in the normal wear of clothing, except when needed for self-defense, defense of others, and the protection of real property, or personal property, real or personal property. Section 23-31-215 K, M, N, and O are changed to read, K, a permit holder immediately must report the loss or theft of a permit identification card to SLED headquarters. M1, unless an individual first obtains authorization to possess a concealable weapon from a person with the apparent authority to grant it, a permit issued pursuant to this section does not authorize a permit holder to carry a concealable weapon into a, and then there's a list of prohibited places that haven't changed, so I won't list them all. M2, except as provided for in item 10, a person who willfully violates a provision of this subsection is guilty of a misdemeanor and, upon conviction, must be fined not less than $1,000 or imprisoned not more than 1 year, or both, at the discretion of the court. This removes the 5-year revocation of your permit if you have one. N1 is changed to read, valid out-of-state permits to carry concealable weapons held by a resident of another state must be honored by this state. A resident of another state carrying a concealable weapon in South Carolina is subject to and must abide by the laws of South Carolina regarding concealable weapons. SLED shall maintain and publish a list of those states as the states with which South Carolina has reciprocity. 2, notwithstanding the reciprocity requirements of item 1, South Carolina shall automatically recognize concealed weapon permits issued by another state. This removes the previous requirement that any state we recognized had to have a training requirement and removes the specific reference to Georgia and North Carolina. However, it does seem to leave the residency requirement, which seems odd considering 16-23-20 is proposed to have changed to specifically allow people from other states who are allowed to possess the ability to carry without a permit. O is changed to read, a permit issued pursuant to this article is not required for a person specified in section 16-23-20, carrying a self-defense device generally considered to be non-lethal, including the substance commonly referred to as pepper gas, or carrying a concealable weapon in a manner not prohibited by law. Section 23-31-220A is reworded slightly to clarify a business or workplace can prohibit concealable weapons on their premises, machinery, vehicles, and equipment, whether the person has a CWP or not, and it also removes the revocation of a CWP if this section is violated. Section 23-31-225 strikes the specific reference to permit holders and the 5-year permit revocation for violators. Section 23-31-240 also strikes the specific reference to permit holders.
Yeah, I think the complication for most people is going to be trying to, looking at these bills individually. You end up with, it's definitely something that we would be, I think, supportive of from what we can see right now. Sort of maybe some wording issues that could be improved upon, but it also really fits together with what else is probably going to be, being considered as some of this stuff goes through. This should really be a good year for people to stay plugged into what's going on in our state legislature and be in contact with your representatives and senators and make sure that you're letting them know where you stand and what bills that they need to be actively working for, because if we don't speak up, then we don't have much influence in what's going on.
Correct. And regardless of your stance on this bill or any other bill, let your legislators know what you're thinking, where your stance is, and contact your representatives, your senators, but also contact the ones that are on these committees, even if they're not for your district. Because there's everything that's proposed so far except one are all in the judiciary committees for the Senate and the House. And the way that, you probably can't see this right now, Randy, but I'm on the South Carolina Legislature website, and I'm going to show everyone how to find their legislators. So, guys and gals, go to scstatehouse.gov, and to find who your specific legislators are, it's pretty easy. You go to you can contact them directly through the website here. You find your legislator right here, submit your address to find your senators and representatives. So I'm going to put in an address. It is not my home address, but it is an address for where I work. So you can find your legislator right there, type in my address, and these are our United States senators and our United States representatives. Those are the guys in Washington, D.C. And while you do need to contact your D.C. people, South Carolina Carry, we are focused on South Carolina. So here, your South Carolina state senator is listed, and then your state representative is listed as well, right here. And this is how you would get in contact with them. Click on the name, gives you their mailing address, phone numbers, business phones. You can click right here and send a message, directly to them. And it gets emailed to them. And if you want to send to an entire committee, go to your so if we go to the Senate, go to standing committees, Judiciary Committee. Luke Rankin is the chairman. We can click here on Judiciary Committee, and it's going to show us who all of the committee members are. And you can contact everyone on that committee with one click. And that's going to send a message to everybody on that committee. So you just fill in your information, type your message. I have found it's better to type the message somewhere else in Note or Word or something. That way you can get it grammar checked or spell checked, and then copy and paste it. And then I just do your CAPTCHA to make sure that you're not a robot. And then you would.
I think one good thing to point out to our we have a Republican Senate and a Republican legislature, representatives House, as well as a Republican governor. So there's no reason. We've gained some seats this year that should make 2A stuff easier to get through. But if there's no reason we haven't been able to get that constitutional carry approved in the past, and so now we definitely have we should have a good reason to really push this through and find out if our representatives are truly going to represent us as they have indicated so as they run for office.
Yeah, but we also have to keep in mind that just because the House and the Senate are Republican majority right now does not mean that our pro-gun bills are going to make it through with smooth sailing, because
Correct.
A lot of people, these bills, they're in the Judiciary Committee right now, but the Judiciary Committee gets split into subcommittees. So your subcommittees are made up of the various Judiciary Committee members. So there are only going to be a handful in each subcommittee, and then all of these bills get split between them so that everybody's not having to review hundreds of bills at one time. And this is where a lot of these bills have gone to die. They die in the subcommittee, or they die in the committee because they just keep getting talked about, or they'll get tabled and they don't make it to a vote, or they in the subcommittee, or they don't make it. If they do make it through the subcommittee, they don't make it through the full judiciary because they keep getting put off or tabled, or, oh, let's discuss this further at the next meeting. And that's how they die. And not all of these committees are headed by Republicans. Most of them are headed by Republicans, but when you get to the subcommittee, there could be a Democrat that's heading a subcommittee. So you've got to keep, that in mind, that you can't just say, oh, well, it's the Republican Senate this year, it's good to go. No, you can't get complacent on that. There's several of these people on this committee that can derail these bills.
And that's why, I think every person that's listening to this information needs to know where their representative stands on these issues, and have a conversation with them, and then find out what you can do to help push that through or get their support on it, if that's possible. We need to let them know where we stand.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I mean, it's so easy to send an email, because literally you can send a message to every one of these people on the Judiciary Committee with one message.
Yep.
And you don't have to send to, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 23 people. You don't have to send 23 different emails. You send one, and it goes to all of them automatically, and you don't have to worry about it getting caught in their spam filter because you're sending it through the State House, through the government system already. So you're not sending it from an outside email address. So do that. Call them. Yes, calling them takes a little bit more time, but click on their names. If you know who is in the subcommittee, and we'll try to, once these subcommittees get assigned and we know what bills going where and what days they're going to start talking about them, we'll let you know as soon as we know, so that you can then contact these subcommittee members. Call them again, call them next week, call them the week after, send another message. Maybe you sent an email last week, send another one this week. Let them know, I'm still watching you, we're still watching these bills. Oh, I see this one's still being pushed through, and I think it needs to die in committee. Whatever it is that whatever action that you think should be taken. But just get involved. And don't just do it yourself. Have your significant other, have your adult children, talk to your neighbors, talk to your coworkers, because these people that are anti-gun, anti-liberty, I should say, that don't want you to be the adult to make your own decisions on how you are safely utilizing your own property, they're screaming the loudest right now. The squeaky wheel is getting that grease.
Yep.
So it's time for us to squeak. Because I guarantee you, when these committee hearings start, that the Moms Demand Action and the Bloomberg groups and the Everytown for Gun Safety groups, they will be there. They will have butts in seats wearing their bright red Moms Demand Action t-shirts and speaking at these committee hearings. I know this because I have been to these committee hearings when they literally take up 2 and 3 rows of seats, and we can barely get a handful of people on the pro-gun side, the pro-liberty side, to show up and to speak. And I do understand, yes, we have jobs that it is very difficult to take time off. We have busy schedules, we have kids, and these committee hearings are held smack in the middle of the workday. I totally understand that. But if you have the ability at all, please try to get involved. Sign up for our email list. Check our Facebook pages. I think we might be trying to get on MeWe. I'm not sure. I got to take a look at that. But, get involved. And don't just sit there. And some people think that they may take offense to this, but don't just be a keyboard warrior. Don't just sit there on Facebook and complain. Get involved and do something.
Well said.
And I get it. I mean, I've been there. My kids, thankfully, are older now, a little bit older, and they don't have to have someone here 24/7. I've got teenagers now that can fend for themselves for a few hours, and I can go get involved a little bit more. So I understand. I've been there. I've been the young mother. I've been the working mother. I'm still a working mother, but there's no reason you can't take 5 minutes to write an email. So
very true.
Anyway, so thank you guys for listening. And I'm not sure how much audio editing there will be on this. I'm sure there will be a good little bit. Thank you for muddling through this first video with us.